focusing a lot on Space Marine kit bashing recently, and neglecting anything from the wider Imperium, the Forces of Chaos, or the Xenos races. I hope to rectify this balance by producing more distinctly non-Space Marine conversions, like this Guardsman here. I'm Pete the Wargamer, and in this video I'll be showing you how to convert the infantry of the Praetorian Guard. The Praetorian Guard have some very distinct stylings based on the 19th century British Army stationed on the African continent. These aesthetics are very hard to recreate by using components solely from Warhammer kits, which means I needed to dip into the third-party market. Luckily, there exist these components from Anvil Industry. Here I have some of the pith helmets and cuirass torsos. These are scaled to work with Games Workshop kits, specifically Imperial Guardsmen, and will provide the historically inspired theming that I was looking to create. I began with the torso. This was clipped from the sprue before being cleaned up, removing any mold lines or sprue tabs. I chose to use these cuirass torsos to help create a low-tech, at least in their outward appearance, alternative to the regular cadian flak armor. With the component cleaned up, I could glue it to the legs. I chose the standard cadian legs for this, as they already appear close enough in appearance to the original Praetorian legs. Additionally, as the torso is designed for use with legs like these, I didn't need to do any other tweaks or adjustments. As the component is resin, it means that I'm unable to use regular plastic glue, so I'd use some super glue to attach them. Next, I needed a weapon. I could have opted to use the regular cadian lasgun here, and that would have worked perfectly well. However, I wanted something that looked a little more antique. I ultimately settled on a component from the ever-useful schitari kit, the galvanic rifle. The longer barrel length, wooden structure, and metal detailing made it a closer approximation to those used by the British Army than the standard lasgun. While the arms here are bionic, it actually helps to tie in to the slight steampunk aspect that the Praetorian Guard have. However, this torso wasn't designed to be used with these arms, so I needed to make a few adjustments. I needed to widen the angle of the arms to compensate for the slightly narrower torso I was using. To do this, I used my file to remove some of the material from the back half of the shoulders, so that the arm joints no longer ran parallel, but instead angled towards the front of the torso. As a result, when they were glued to the torso, the arms angled outwards slightly, which in turn compensated for the fact that the torso was slightly narrower. While the galvanic rifle was a great alternative to the lasgun, it wasn't quite perfect. It still needed a bayonet, and thankfully the cadian sprue already comes with some. I could see from comparing the two that the bayonet would fit nicely at the end of the rifle, and so just needed to be carefully cut away using my knife. I made a few trims to clean up the cuts, which left me with this separated bayonet. Before I glued this on, I first attached the schitari arms to the torso. I had compared the fit to ensure that the new angle was correct before making anything permanent. Once I was sure, I superglued the right arm first, followed by the left. I used superglue for both of these, but used some plastic glue to join the arm and the rifle. With the arms glued into place, I could finish off the weapon by attaching the bayonet just beneath the muzzle. The next step was to add the head. This particular component was one of the regular pith helmets. There also exist gas masks and female alternatives for these as well, but I wasn't planning on gluing on the helmet to the torso just yet. I wanted to keep it separate to make painting easier, but I needed something to make holding it easier too. I began by removing the head from the sprue and trimmed away any mold lines. I didn't need to make any further adjustments here, as the head would already fit perfectly into the torso's ball socket neck joint. To create a simple holder, I started by drilling a few millimeters into the bottom of the neck using my pin vise and a 1mm drill bit. Into this hole, I superglued a length of 1mm thick florist wire before clipping the length and bending it around. This would give me something to hold onto whilst I painted, and would help me to avoid getting my fingers all over my fresh paintwork. With the main structure of the model achieved, I just needed to help bulk him out a little with some pouches and equipment. I began with one of these haversacks, also from Anvil Industry, and these packs really tied into the theme that I was creating here. All I needed to do was to remove them from the sprue, clean up, and glue straight to the torso. If you're planning on attaching these to a cadian torso, you would also need to remove the small protruding parts from the back before you could attach this haversack. The final step was to attach one of the small equipment packs from the cadian sprue. Unfortunately, due to the haversack, I couldn't just attach this to the legs, as I no longer had the space. In order to get these components onto the model, I had to use my knife to separate the ammo pouch and the scabbard from the canteen. Once this was done, I cleaned up the cuts before gluing them to each side of the belt. And with that, the model was very nearly completed. It just needed to be based and painted, which left me with this. And here we have the completed Praetorian Guard. I painted him in the standard colours of blue trousers, red jacket and tan-coloured armour, and based him in a desert scheme. Overall, the result is something recognisable as a Praetorian Guard. It also uses just enough Games Workshop parts to be usable in some tournament scenes. If you'd like to recreate this miniature, I'll include all the links to the components that I used from Anvil Industry in the description below. And if you enjoyed this Astra Militarum kitbashing guide and you would like to see me take on more, then do let me know down in the comments. So, the final thing to say is a massive thank you to all of my supporters. Whether you support me on Patreon, buy me a coffee, or you just use my affiliates links, your help is what keeps this channel alive, and it's what allows me to build these conversions for you. If you'd like to help me out, you can check out my description for all the relevant links. And so, until next time, thanks for watching, and goodbye.